Hey, everybody, welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. This podcast series is about getting to the books that have impacted the lives of the people in my network, people that I've known for a while, people I've only met, some I've never met in person, but we're here having these great conversations. So these are great leads to get to those books that have made the most impact on them. And I want to know which books have contributed the most to the way that they work in their life, their actual work, their business. All these areas intersect. And there's three categories of books that we cover in this series. The first category where they're sharing with a book with me that I haven't read yet. Second category where we cover a book that we've both read, whether specifically for this series or from our past lives before the series. The third category is when I get to talk to the author and or publisher about the book that they're putting out there for the masses to put a tone, to put a face, to put some values onto that message they're trying to get out to the masses. And today, my guest is Dr. Benjamin Ritter. And Ben, as founder of LFY Consulting and author of Becoming Fearless, is an international leadership and career coach, senior talent management consultant, top LinkedIn voice, global speaker, and host of the Executive and the Live Fearlessly podcast. He has over 12 years of experience working internally as a talent and leadership development leader and externally as a coach in the realms of career and leadership development. Ben has coached over 500 leaders with a strong focus on senior level executives across multiple industries and geographic regions, including companies such as Amazon, Coursera, DoorDash, Google, Fiserv, Northwestern, Pinterest, Yelp, and many more. And I was lucky enough to have Ben reach out about coming on the series to share a book that is important to him. As you'll see, we got to talking. I got to looking through his history, talking to him about my experience, his experience, just trying to find what that value is in someone's work and what they can bring to the conversation. So I asked him to come on and have this talk with me, have this conversation to break down the book that he wants to share with others. So, Ben, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, John. And I'm
So,
excited to be here. Books have changed my life, and I'm sure they've changed all the listeners' lives while they're listening.
so for you, well, since you mentioned that already, first tangent of mine, here we're going to be talking about your book, but because you say books have changed your life, what books? Can you name a few that have really jumped out and made that impact on you?
Okay, there's a lot, so I'll be selective. Reframing taught me all about how we are in control of our minds and what we want to believe and how our thoughts impact our reality. So it's kind of my intro into just being that self leader. I was very also into confidence and learning how to be more socially aware when I was younger. So books like Influence, Persuasion came out later, Getting the Yes, like that whole kind of bulk of books. But then I tried to be a little unique and read a book called Impro, which is actually kind of about the founding of improv. So a lot of human psychology and social behavior for when I was younger was really important to how I grew up. Now, a lot of the books that I pay attention to are around kind of leadership development, our perception of time, how to integrate into society when you kind of also want to operate out of it.
Mm. All right. Yeah, we'll dive into those themes, I'm sure, as this conversation goes on. Ben, how I usually start the conversation, who are you today? If you could just walk us through your day to day, the work that you're doing, the services you offer, what's keeping you busy today?
Yeah, so I'm basically a career coach for leaders at all stages of their professional journey. Generally, I work with people that want to do more than they're doing. So they're values driven, they're impact driven, they're oftentimes health conscious because they tend to think that life is more than just about work, but they care about how they show up to
Yeah.
work. So career clarity, how to get the most out of their job, how to be the greatest leader currently, right, for their team as well as for themselves. And oftentimes I work for senior managers and executive leaders, but I also really love doing work for kind of that young adult age group just because that intro start of my career was so terrible. And so,
Mm,
I do what I do. I wrote the book because I don't want people to deal with what I've dealt with. And I want to see people a little bit more fearless overall in their career and not to operate and be controlled by certain limiting beliefs. And So that's how that's what I do. I get to do that every single day. And outside of just coaching, I also do talent facilitation. So develop workshops, deliver them, leader assessment, like very large kind of emerging leader and executive leader coaching programs. And it's pretty fulfilling, other than like being in nature and hanging out with friends and going for
Yeah.
walks and going to the gym, which I think when people are like, who are you? And it's like, well, I care about personal empowerment and accountability. I would love people to be healthier. I think that we have a service we need to do. Like we have responsibility to ourselves to figure out what we want to create in our life and not to be like pressured by anything from a societal or capitalistic kind of frame. So
Yeah.
like, be like, who is Ben? Like all those
Oh
things
yeah.
other than
There's
what
a
I
lot
do
of
for a living.
Yeah, there's a lot of components that goes into so many people. I mean, yeah, we could talk about all the bits and pieces about us. And I don't think I've asked this question at this point in the conversation, but just hearing you talk about what you were interested in reading when you were younger, how it's evolved to now, um, being on the inside versus the outside, fearlessness, obviously. When it comes to all that, what do you take away from how you help people? What does that feel like when you help people achieve those things? I don't think I've asked somebody, how do you feel when you see those aha moments in your clients or what you see what they're taking away? Can you describe that? What does that do for you?
Well, it's how I stay connected. I think how everyone can stay connected to showing up to work. I mean, if I didn't have to work, I wouldn't. Honestly, and I think a
Yeah.
lot of people would say the same thing. And would I still use my strengths and my talents and skills to help people? Yes. But I was at a concert yesterday, and every single person in the crowd was singing this person's songs, and they were dressed up as the artist, and it was incredible to see that level of joy. And I was thinking about this artist's life though, like we're just in New York 2 nights before. They're at a show today. They're going to another show 2 nights from now. They're constantly performing and working and kind of getting they're drowning in doing the work. And if they don't connect to the people in the crowd that are screaming their name and the words to their song, they're going to not want to do what they're doing for a living. They're just going to burn out. And so for me, yeah, I have to pay attention to my clients and like outcomes and impact. Like from knowing what they finally want to do in their career, to getting a job, to feeling like they can manage their leader and manage up and have more control over their day to day and their professional life, or to feel like they can set boundaries and say no to a certain meeting. Like that stuff, you need to connect to that. Because if you don't, then you're eventually going to not find the motivation to do anything else. Like you're not going to want to write a book. You're not going to want to put in
Yeah.
that effort.
Yeah.
That's not a fun way to work.
Absolutely. Ben, when it comes to you to understand how you ended up here and to understand a little more about the person who's going to share this book with us in the coming minutes, what did your path till now look like? What did it start off as? Did you go into, higher education, into college? Did you go straight into the workforce? What did those steps into the workforce look like? And then what did that path look like to now to get to where you are?
Yeah, if anyone's listening to this, check out my LinkedIn profile, Dr. Benjamin Ritter, just because I have an entry all the way at the bottom that lists a lot of the odd jobs and positions that I've had. And I put them there because it really like represents how I see work, but also the fact that I didn't just like know that I wanted to do this and ended up here. I had a pretty disruptive career, which is why I care about career development, why I care about personal development, why I've kind of merged these worlds within leadership, career, and personal. So I initially wanted to be a professional soccer player. So if you asked me before I was 21, Ben, what books are you reading? I would say How to Dribble, like World Cup, something like they would all have soccer titles. Everything I did with my life was dedicated to the sport. Sport didn't work out. And when I lost that part of who I was, I had to figure out who I wanted to be. And a large part of that was exploring life, hence all those books around human behavior and improv and confidence. And so then once I spent, 4 to 5 years figuring out, just like exploring life, I I realized that I didn't know actually what I wanted. So you can explore and have a bunch of fun, but eventually you end up just feeling like really stuck and lost and alone if you don't know what you're working towards, if there's no intention, if there's no like real values, focus, and purpose.
Hmm.
And at that point, I ended up working kind of like had a couple other career disappointments along the way. So soccer didn't work out. I thought I wanted to go into nutrition because it was kind of related to how I was training. They canceled that major, so that didn't work out. I thought to myself, well, I want to be involved in nutrition and health in some way. And then my mom got sick, so I got interested in public health policy. So went into policy, and following your passions and your interests and your experiences. Worked for the government for a bit, and not only did they cut the position, but I also realized that things move very slowly in government, and I thought it would be harder to change policy to impact change, and it'd be easier to change people. Because I'm like, I've changed myself. That
Yeah.
was I know how to do that. How do we go change people? Sadly, over the next, I'd say 2.5, 3 years, 4 different jobs were offered to me. They were canceled due to funding. So I had this like really tough time professionally. Another hiccup in my professional life that made me kind of feel defeated. And I networked into healthcare because I needed to pay my bills. I was bartending. At the same time, I was going out and being that fearless Ben, and serendipitously met someone that hired me to run a men's coaching program and so I did that for a year. So all of a sudden now I'm like, I feel like my career isn't anything I can choose. I'm just falling into things and doing them because they're there. And I have all these experiences that relate to coaching, health, career development, uh, and honestly, personal resilience in wanting to change people, not policy. And I was a very unhappy professional that time. I Because it seemed like everything wasn't working out for me. But then luckily, I ended up in some sort of leadership development training program, 16 months of training. I ended up getting paired up with a mentor, a leadership coach, and he created a safe space for me to kind of to question my beliefs around my professional life and to realize that I was kind of giving away power instead of taking it. That I
Mhm.
was thinking that where I was wrong, so I gave up the opportunity to make it right. And those instances, that changed my belief system, helped me sit back, conduct a career audit again, and say, well, okay, I knew where I wanted to go before. It didn't work out. That's not the equation that's always going to happen. What do I want to do again? Let's get back on the path to making it work out. And I did, what do you care about? What are you passionate about? What are your values? What change do you want to see in the world? All those lovely questions. I came up with the idea that, well, I want to study leadership development, talent development. I want to help people that struggled with what I struggled with, but I don't know what I want to do with it yet. And a lot of times I work with people that are stuck in what they want to do and they think they need to know the answer, like the end job. You don't. You just need to know the things that you want to get curious about and explore and you're willing to invest time in. So I
Mhm.
didn't know what I was going to do. I stayed in healthcare, but I ended up going and enrolling in a doctoral program. So a organizational leadership program. And about a year into that program, a year and a half into that program, I realized that I wanted to create a new company within the leadership development space. I wanted to go do talent management work and started paving the path to make that happen. And that was long too. That was another, I graduated from there in 2018. I had this business started then, started making some good money then. But like the decision to go back and get my doctorate in that field is 2015. So you're looking, at least 3 years to kind of get started in the field. Didn't get my first real good job in talent management until like 2019, 20. So it's like every single one of these journeys was a 3 to 5 year window of effort, of interest, of curiosity, of work that led me to kind of that next step. And I think when people think about their careers, they tend to get defeated because they want it to happen tomorrow. Things that generally things that they could accomplish in 5 years if they really wanted to.
So, what was it that shaped it in you? Because I mean, the soccer's it's a big contribution to who someone is, sports, the teamwork. What did you go to college for?
So I went for soccer, but I was studying initially nutrition, and they canceled that about a little over halfway through the program. So then I was doing a business degree on the side because the advice I was getting was like, get a general business degree in case you end up going to business. Now, I had interest in entrepreneurship at that time, was thinking about different companies to start. And so really did focus and gravitate towards the business side of things. Didn't really want to be a dietitian later on in life. Didn't think the financial like end goal was gonna be what I wanted, so it was probably gonna be some merger of sport, nutrition, and health, and development, and training, and such. But when soccer didn't work out and when nutrition didn't work out, I was like, "Well, maybe I'll go into med school." And I was like, "Well, that's a terrible ROI," at least in my mind. It's like all that time and energy. What do I wanna do? And I ended up, getting out of college with a marketing degree. Like, you can go sell knives door to door, at least back in, like, 2007. It wasn't, like, the greatest degree. They didn't really prepare you for what potentially could happen outside of college. I ended up becoming a marketing associate for a chiropractic office, and while I was doing that and driving and holding corporate events and doing nutrition screenings, I was like, I should, like, start this company." And I was gonna start this food-based company because I was interested in nutrition at the time. And one of the greatest, I think, learning points in my life, and I think greatest points in everyone's life, is when they choose not to do something out of fear. And I
Mm.
chose not to launch the company despite doing all the research, all the legwork, all the nutritional testing, all the taste testing, and instead got offered a almost a full ride to go to grad school as a graduate assistantship, because I ended up running the student employment office at the university, which is where I kind of also got a taste for career development. And they paid
Okay.
for my education. I did my MBA in entrepreneurial management. I did my MPH in health policy.
Oh,
That's how I
wow.
got involved in the Illinois Department of Public Health and did work for them, but also ended up like doing presentations on interviewing and resumes. I hired 150 people, had them in a database. And so like all these, it's interesting how all these different experiences in our life when it comes to our career hint at talents and skills and such that we develop over time that might lead to a different career. And
Oh, yeah.
oftentimes, again, when I work with people in career clarity, it's like they know what they want to do. It's just hiding from them, or they have some sort of belief that's like clouding that aspect of what they really care about and their interests.
Yeah, I love what you said a couple minutes ago about not necessarily having that goal in mind or that exact title or position or description in mind, but it's amazing how often that does happen. Again, and with clients that I work with, where you don't know where you're supposed to be, but you have that energy, you have that curiosity. I'm at the point now in my life where I recognize the power of the journey, the learning of the journey. It sounds so cliche, but that power of the journey, the enjoyment and fulfillment of the journey, it's amazing how like the journey can be more fulfilling than most of the goals that I reached. Because in general, it's like you get to the goal, it's like, okay, now what? But then the journey, you're like experimenting, you're tweaking, you're undoing, maybe failing, things are working out, things aren't working out. So it's incredible. I love that you point that out and paint that picture that just having that curiosity. And I try to instill that or share that with students when I present to students because there's so much pressure about having that locked in perfect stepping off point when you graduate college. And I think they lose sight of all that internal work that you've referenced.
Yeah, that first job out of college, I mean, it's like meaningless.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that it might end up creating an interest in an industry that you didn't have previously, and that interest then can lead to a broader career in that field. It's but you can that first job is just to show that you can work for like a
Yeah,
year or two,
exactly.
and
Yeah, it's a
and
proving ground,
yeah,
but yeah.
yeah.
Ben, when it comes to you, you wanted to go to school for soccer. You said you were reading soccer, kind of obsessed with soccer. And obviously, any kind of sport to that caliber, to that level, entails nutrition. But was there anything else in your life, whether it's family role models, that informed that nutritional aspect of what you could learn and which way you could go if the nutrition program did work out, going in that direction?
I literally just got obsessed with everything that could make me a better athlete, and so that was physical fitness and nutrition. And physical fitness just didn't seem like a place again where I could hit certain financial goals, and
Mhm.
nutrition. And I mean, honestly, this is so interesting. Like, you can love something, and I think nowadays there's more options on how to actually create a business and create money
Yeah.
from like a certain occupation. But
Yeah.
then that stuff didn't really exist, or like it wasn't really as big. Like as a nutritionist, like there wasn't no one was going on online and and making programs that you could
Starting a
sell. Like,
following or anything like that.
yeah, that started later on. But no, just wanting to become a better athlete, and then I just got so so passionate about the food that I put in my body, the way that it would affect my body, how to train, how to work out. And then, my mom got sick during kind of close to that time. And so, and I got injured, and it was like, okay, well, what's really going on with food in our industry? And so that led to some more, interests and such. And so even to this day, like when we look at my involvement in nutrition, I actually mentor CPG, like better for you health food product or companies. And so I'm also an investor in a fund for them. And it's funny how those like initial experiences impact where you want to spend your time.
Yeah, that's come up in a lot of these conversations where people have these haphazard kind of career paths and lives going in one direction a couple of years that didn't work out, going in this direction that didn't work out, kind of zigzagging. And very rarely, if the person is persistent, if they're dedicated, if they do their due diligence, if they're committed, things work out. And the thing is, they'll land where they're supposed to, where they feel right, where they feel fulfilled and happy. And all of those little journeys, those little tangents they took that they didn't believe went anywhere, all of those contribute to where they are now. You know what I mean? So at that time, it may be frustrating, you may be disappointed, sad, whatever it may be, but then when you get where you're supposed to be, you bring all those talents, those experiences, those emotions from all of the I mean, there's almost nothing that's lost, even the bad experiences, the negative experiences.
Yeah, we are the culmination of our past. Now, when we want to create a different future, that can sometimes be a problem, but we can leverage those strengths that we've developed, kind of push aside some of the limiting beliefs or the things that maybe we didn't like. They're always
Mhm,
going to be there to make that kind of next leap forward. It's like I had a podcast before for 5.5 years. It was in a coaching company that I built during that time. I had a book and I wrote for major publications. And they made the decision that that isn't who I wanted to be and how I wanted to be branded. And so I shut everything down. It was one of the hardest decisions I made, but it was important because it took a year and a half to rebrand who I was to the people around me and my community to kind of get rid of some of the evergreen content in the internet. And that was hard, but
what was the difference between that brand
yeah.
and your new brand? What was
So so I kind of sped through this, but coaching for me has kind of come up a couple times. And if you're looking to figure out what you want to do in your career, you have to look for the things, the gophers that kind of pop up their head all the time. And so one, coaching was like my own personal story, how I grew and how I developed my own sense of self. I then ended up I was at a bar, like running into someone who's like, "You need to meet my boss." I can sense how you're like kind of managing the room here and talking to people. I met his boss the next day, the whole team. They hired me to be a men's coach. So I basically coached men for the next year across the United States, featured by like Ask Men and Men's Health, some pretty large publications. After working for him for about a year, I didn't really like his business practices. And so I was like, well, I don't really want to be in this space, but I want to help people in this space because it was part of my journey. So I wrote a book and I published it, like a pocket book that I thought the industry needed. Realized at that point that no one knew who I was and no one would buy my book. So I wasn't actually going to make an impact. So then I was like, well, maybe I should start a business in this space. So got a
Mm.
business partner, started a business, started doing talks, started hosting events, started creating a podcast. And it was all around men and dating and relationships and confidence. Fast forward, I end up getting a federal grant for life coaching. I get 6 months of free life coaching from the government for a public health professional. I am falling in love with this idea of coaching, but not the way that I was doing it and who I was serving. And then I had this, 16 months of leadership training for my own organization and realized that I could coach in a professional world. I could coach in an organization. I could help leaders grow. I could help talent grow. I could help individuals figure out their own careers and realized if I wanted to do that, I needed to explore how I wanted to make this happen for my career. I couldn't have this other brand. And so I shut it down. I did not want to be the dating coach. I wanted to be bigger, broader, more.
Hmm.
I think in my life, it became more impactful for me to operate with leaders, with organizations, with individuals for their career. And it's interesting because that became more important for me. Like underlying my entire life, what would have been important. I wish I had someone like that when I was playing soccer. That
Yeah.
would have made a huge difference throughout my life. And so that's why I made the pivot.
Ben, how do you reconcile who you were as a kid to who you are now and what you're doing? How can you speak to that? How can you connect the two? Not in terms of career path, but what of your personality, your dreams, your hopes, your personality style, how do you reconcile who you were then to the work you're doing now? What stands out?
I'd love your own perspective on yourself too, because I was actually just thinking about this literally yesterday. I wanted to be an astronaut, an archaeologist. I used to play like games with my imagination. I was very much into fantasy. I wrote poems. I drew. I was like an artist in my own right. I played the violin. I sang in choir. And I was reflecting. I was like, man, I was like real creative. Like I was
Mm,
this kid that was like an artist. I wasn't like a good artist, but I had all these interests and some talent. Talent enough to get involved in those fields. And I also, though, at the same time, felt kind of like a social outcast. I had no real community. I would jump between different friend groups. I never was like, I never liked the popular group or status. Always kind of bugged me. I was very much into fairness. And initially, when I was younger, I was a class clown. Like I failed out of math, and I ended up like punching a teacher once. I Parents tell me that all the time. Like I was a very different person than I am now, the academic, or at least with all the degrees and and so I look at who I am today and I was like, okay, I see some things that are similar. I see the resilience, I see the curiosity, but maybe I'm missing a little bit of the art. And because I do connect to that. Like I was actually reflecting, like, what do I want in my life? If I could wake up tomorrow and have nothing. And yes, even a leadership and career coach will sit down and ask themselves what they want to do in their
yeah,
life.
that's one thing coaches have said on here. Like coaches need coaches, coaches need reflection. They're not coming
Yeah.
in. They can't solve every problem right away. I think the power of a coach is that ability to reflect whether it's about somebody else or themselves.
hmm So again, I don't know if I really answered your question, but I do see the I do see the curiosity, I see the resilience, I see the desire to help people fit in, to help people grow. I see the interest in like getting to know everyone and like a lack of judgment towards people and their own decisions in life, just also because I felt like that was something I struggled with. And then this aspect of like tinkering or creativity is an aspect that I think I do actually integrate into how I built my business, but it's something that I want to connect with even just a little bit more.
Ben, what do you consider your superpower? And you may have already touched on it in so many ways, but asking you directly, what's your superpower?
Looking at a situation and saying, okay, now what? The concept that we are our own leader, no matter what. And I don't care what happens to you. What do you want to do next? And how does it serve your broader goals and your values? And that's why I coach in that way. It's how do you develop the person inside you that knows so deeply who you are, who you want to be, and how you show up. That when something happens outside of yourself, you don't say, "Oh, woe is me." You say, "Okay, so these are the ingredients that I have to bake the cake with. How do I do it?" That would be, I think, how I've been able to get to where I am in life and how I've been able to help others.
Beautiful. And then one last question before we jump into the book. What do you consider how do you define leadership? What do you consider as great leadership?
You probably heard the quote before that you're not a leader without followers. So, with that understanding, let's say that a leader has people around them that want to follow them. True leadership is creating an environment that allows someone to succeed.
Love it.
So for,
And
for
then
yeah, for example, yeah,
oh, go
I
ahead, go
don't
ahead.
need
I'm
to
sorry.
elaborate on that. No, that's fine. It's
You have
that
a good
encompasses it.
example or something comes to mind?
I often give workshops on the team model of managing to motivate. So it relates to how do you like build trust, but then how do you craft an environment? So an environment involves the social relationship. So who that person engages with on a daily basis. Do they bring them joy or do they drain them? Adapting and strategizing towards that. It's the tools that they have. So like sending everyone to go work remotely, but not giving them a desk or a camera. No, even something as simple as their paper in the copy machine. Like what is actually draining them due to resources, due to the tools that they use
Mm,
to do their job. It also involves the type of work that they're actually doing. So this is the actual work. So do they enjoy the work that they're doing? Is it challenging them? Is it leading them towards their career goals? Or is it draining towards them? And it's not that you don't do anything that drains you, it's that you strategize around it. You operate differently. You attack it with different tools and resources so it doesn't drain you as much. And then does that person also feel that their work has meaning? We talked a little bit earlier about like what do I get from my work? Well, if I don't connect to the meaning behind what I do every day, I don't want to work. And so how does the leader then constantly represent or highlight the meaning of the individual to the broader organization and the impact that the organization is having? And they have to do this for each individual person. So you can create like an employee profile if you want for them so you can remember this information. But it also involves communication. So I'm going to actually sit down and ask my employee these types of questions. And I'm going to remember and then use that to craft an environment that helps them.
but now we can jump into the book. Why don't you introduce the book and how it came to be?
So the book is Becoming Fearless. I hope that it resonates, like the title even resonates just from what we talked about so far. I had to learn to be fearless in my own life, and I learned how to be fearless in my personal life way before I learned how to be fearless in my professional life. And when I realized that I was not being fearless in my professional life is when I had a little bit of that a wake up call. So if you're sitting here wondering like, what do I need to be more fearless? And just ask yourself that simple question and see what your gut instinct says. Because we can be different. We can approach those different aspects of our life with different parts of ourselves. I was just really frustrated with people feeling like they couldn't do the things that they wanted to do. Like I'd be talking to somebody or a client or a general person that realized I was a coach, and they'd have these beliefs like, "Oh, I want to do this, but I can't. I want to do this, but I can't." And that is like so heart wrenching. It makes me so sad that people want to maybe and generally create an impact for themselves and for others, but for some reason feel like they can't. So the book was formed to create a broader impact. Like I have this message in my podcast, I have this message in my coaching, but there's something about a book that maybe it's less intimidating, maybe can access more people. It's distributed around the world to hopefully help people become fearless and just live more for themselves throughout their life, personally and professionally.
Can you speak about your fearlessness? I guess the points at which you evolved in your life as you were getting older, as you were going through your life into your career. Can you speak briefly on that? You've touched upon it, but speaking directly about that fear or fearlessness, what did that evolution look like for you? How did you get to that point where you're like, okay, this is something that I have to focus on, this particular area?
Yeah, every roadblock in life is there because you believe that it's there. I can't go talk to that person because I'm afraid of what they're going to say. I can't apply to that job because I'm afraid of getting rejected. I can't go ask my boss for a promotion because I'm afraid of potentially, getting told no and getting rejected or losing my job. And I learned to be fearless in my athletic pursuits when I was younger. And I think those are priceless. The fact that I can go out and train to the point of exhaustion and train even more, the point that I can go to, that your whole success is based off of what someone thinks of your talent. And so I built a certain level of competitiveness and the belief that I could do more than my mind thought that I could. And I was able to take those types of traits and like use them for the pursuit of my own personal and professional development. And I've shared a couple of them already. Like I didn't start the business because I was afraid. I wouldn't approach people because I was afraid. I wouldn't talk to friends. I wouldn't say what was in my mind because I was afraid of being judged. I didn't, apply to certain jobs 'cause I was afraid of maybe that being the wrong choice. But honestly, at a young age, I became pretty fearless because I didn't like my personal life or my professional life, and I was sick of it. And so up to this point, and I'd say over the past, I mean, more than 10 years now, I've been living a fearless life. And it's incredible when you choose to do that. When you choose to say, this is what I want, I'm going to go try to get that and make that happen. And if it doesn't work out, I'm just going to try again. Like, yes, I'm going to send 3,000 messages to get 30 sponsors for my book launch. I'm going to send 300 queries to see if I can get a publisher for my book. I'm going to send 150 connection requests on LinkedIn every week, plus emails to get people to sign up for my program. Like, I'm going to apply to 1,000 jobs. I'm going to help my clients. Like, these are numbers that might overwhelm people because I
Mhm.
work with clients when they're looking for a new job and like, I applied for one job. I'm really excited about the
Yeah,
potential of getting it.
yeah,
Fearlessness is realizing that if you really care about a goal and you really care about the value and impact you want to create in the world, are you willing to sacrifice certain things and accept the no's and the rejection along the way? And I learned that at a very young age.
yeah. Um, a few things. Do you remember the particular moment where that kinda switched in your head? Or was it a gradual thing? I know there were a lot of events where they're kind of teaching you and you're maybe not seeing the lesson for a couple of years. Or was there a particular moment, a specific moment or event or change in life that really woke you up to that mindset?
When you feel like you lost everything and you realize that there's nothing left to lose, it's a really good starting point. So when I lost soccer and didn't know who I was and didn't know what I wanted to do professionally, and honestly didn't care about anything, I asked myself, well, you have a choice. You can keep not caring about anything and think that you're worthless, or you can realize this is something to learn, just like you practiced on soccer every single day, and learn it
Yeah.
and go try it out. And like without fear, because the idea of something going wrong when you're learning, that like those two things don't really go together. Like learning and wrong, those kind of conflict with each other. Because
Yeah.
when you're learning, you're making progress. And so if something doesn't go right, that's a learning opportunity. And so at that point, it really changed. Like a switch was flicked within me to say, you can just go put on your sailor's cap, jump on your ship, and go, and you're going to be okay no matter what happens. For my and honestly, I think that that worked for everything. But the problem with my professional life was that I was fearless, but I didn't know how to do things properly. I didn't know how to apply for jobs. I didn't know how to network. I didn't know what I really cared about and how to achieve it. And so I just didn't have the right strategies along the way. I mean, at this point, for fearlessness and not caring about rejection has served me so well in terms of just building my business and my life. I think it just, you do it long enough, it reinforces itself.
Yeah, that's the key to that. There's a few things you said where it's like when you lose everything or you feel like you've lost everything, to me it's like a blank canvas. It is permission to go out there and try anything you want. I've never been in a position such as yours where you lost. I don't think I've ever been as passionate about anything sports wise, but just that you had that loss and the nutrition thing, it's kind of like a blank slate. It's like, what do you choose to design, paint, build, create from there? So I love that idea because not many people may see it that way. They see it as I lost everything, so I've lost everything that I was ever meant to have, and they give up on looking for that next thing or looking for what else might be for them.
Yeah, I think that soccer also gave me a certain level of like it changed the scales of effort. So a lot of people right now might be wanting to change and think that the amount of effort needed to make that change is too great. And when I was practicing for soccer or exploring, I was practicing 2 extra times a day in comparison to my college training. And I was watching everything on TV that was soccer. I was eating everything that I thought would make me a better athlete. I was going to the gym as well and training. Now that was not a healthy, that was an obsession.
Yeah.
But when you realize that you have a lot more time in your day than you think, and if you
Hmm.
care about something enough and you're willing to send 100 emails, yeah, that can take some time, but you can watch TV while you do it. It's just people are like, oh, but instead of
Yeah.
sending 100 emails, I just want to chill out because I'm so exhausted from my day because I hate it so much that I don't have any energy left. Um, we don't have to lose everything to want to do something else.
Hmm.
I think we need to decide if we're willing to invest the energy or to sacrifice something else to create that.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of discipline, of people understanding what goes into something. Um, we're the type of society we want instant gratification. We all we think we see is overnight successes. I don't think people understand how much work goes into these great things that they see, whether it's sports players, musicians, artists, writers. I don't think we really grasp how much work is there behind the scenes. We just see the final product that we've enjoyed. Um, so I think that's what all of us need to get a good grasp on is if you want something, you have to demonstrate how much you want it. You have to understand how much goes into something. I think that's where we get lost is we think if we can't do it right away, then it's not meant for us. If we don't see results right away, then that's not what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and it's strange because everything in our life that's important generally takes time. Like
Yeah.
you start dating somebody and you don't really know if they're a good fit for 3 to 5 years. Like you might think they are, and then maybe longer. Like, that 7 year mark in a relationship or a marriage. So then you've already had 3 relationships in that one relationship so far, and you're finally building a really solid
Yeah.
partnership.
Yeah.
Friendships. Like how long does it take to create new friendships? You're looking at your career. You start as an entry level employee. 3 to 5 years, you might be mid level, and
Yeah.
then another 10 to 15 to become an executive or senior, but we forget. And
Mhm.
anything that's change related, it doesn't happen in a week, doesn't happen in a month, but it really can happen in 3 years. Like a lot of massive change can happen in your life. You can build a whole new career, a whole new life. But are you willing to do the one thing every day without that sign of progress, without that like mega change to make
Mhm.
sure that that does occur, that you have that transformation? But everything in our life takes that long.
Yeah.
Uh, Even like a body transformation, and maybe not as much if we are dedicated in commitment, usually 16 weeks, but that's still 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people see what they're losing out on, missing out on as the opportunity cost. So, I mean, it's a deeper conversation people need to have with each other to understand that. And I mean, and having a solid accountability partner that's trying to learn that with you always helps, no matter what the case may be, no matter what the industry is, the art, whatever it may be. Ben, can you provide an overview of the book? So we have a general idea of what the book is about, but what kind of path do you take the reader on? How do you take that journey with them? How do you guide them through that, through the value and the message you want to share with them?
Mhm. So the book's broken up into 65 strategies on becoming fearless, moving from self doubt to self mastery, and split up into personal and professional because there's certain things that relate to your personal self and certain things that relate to your professional life. And fear impacts them in different ways. But it's not written in a narrative form. You're not going to start the book and like read this story of this individual that has been transformed and you're going to get transformed. No, it doesn't work like that. Each strategy, it can be its own journey, its own book.
Mhm.
So oftentimes people are struggling in life with a certain fear is impacting them in a certain way. And so no matter what else they read about how fear is impacting them, they're not ready for it or they don't care about it enough. So the book is organized in a way for you to find the thing that fear is impacting you like just enough. Like It's not like this massive fear. It's like, I know I need to change this thing. I've kind of tried one or two things, hasn't really worked, but fear is really holding me back here. I have this goal, I don't really know what to do. And it poses a question for you to understand if fear is impacting you, if fear is impacting your life in this way. Gives a little bit of information about what that fear is doing to you, to your life. And then one very simple action that you can take to change it. And if you do that action consistently, you actually show up and you try this out without, because it's not going to like destroy your life. It's just like a little suggestion. That fear will start to diminish, and you'll start to redefine that fear as information. That's just an ingredient for you to reach your goal. And these strategies are done 65 times. So, and the 65 different strategies are, selected very specifically around how fear is impacting different areas of your personal and professional life. And we try to encompass them all. Maybe I'll come out with some more in the future. But it's written to be very much action oriented, for someone to say, this is how fear is impacting me. I'm ready for it to change. What do I do? This is what you can do. And fear gets reinterpreted as an information, and hopefully you reach your goal.
So are the 65 broken up into different categories depending on what part of life or work the person might be trying to learn about? Or are they just kind of just general practices that you can utilize regardless of the environment? How do you organize that?
Yeah. So, for example, in personal, it's broken down by mindset, success, relationships, and purpose. Professional is broken up through job satisfaction, leadership presence, and career growth. And so I've tried to look at the different aspects of our personal and professional lives and then kind of capture the different areas that fear impacts us in that way.
Can you give an example? Not to give away the store or anything, but can you give a just an overview of an example from personal and one from professional?
Yeah. And let's see, I'll actually just pull out the book. So, one of my favorite ones in personal is in the purpose section, and it's about never having enough.
Mhm.
And I learned, so all these either come from my life or client experiences, things that really changed my world, like transformed me. And very often, people that are high achievers or people that question life worry or fear that they're not doing enough. And it's very stressful, to say the
Yeah.
least, when you think that you're not doing enough in your life. And it also makes you think that the things that you're doing aren't worthy anymore. And so it sometimes forces change when change isn't really needed. It creates depression, sadness, stress, which then impacts our relationships and impacts almost every decision that we make. And the book, or this tip, this strategy, suggests that the whole point of having a purpose, for feeling like your life is meaningful or feeling like you're doing something that's important, is to bring you joy. It's
Mhm.
to help you feel motivated. And if that ever goes away, like if you ever actually feel like you've never done enough, then you're going to lose that motivation and that joy and that meaning.
Yeah.
And so it's the idea of saying, like, this is here, it's a gift. It's supposed to be there. It's never supposed to be gone. It's supposed to be almost a tool that you use to find more joy and fulfillment in life, not pressure that's supposed to force you to do something. And hopefully kind of reframes this topic of, or this feeling of never doing enough.
And then were you gonna say something?
For
I'm
the
sorry.
Oh no, so for the professional, I can go to the professional section. Let's see. One of the one of the ones which is a little bit more, I think, practical, talks about if you want a seat at the table. So a lot of the clients I work with want to have more strategic involvement in an organization and their role, but they're afraid. They don't know how to do it. They're worried about being judged. They're afraid of stepping out of their role. They're afraid of losing. I mean, generally, when it comes to our professional world, we're afraid of losing our job, even if we don't want our job. And so this tip suggests, if you want to have a seat at the table as an executive, you need to show up as an executive, and that means you have to mirror the executives in your organization. And so you have to pay very close attention to when your leaders are in the room, what they wear, how they talk, what they say, what questions they ask, and list those elements out and pick one that you just want to try. And every week you try something else, you try something new. Because as you build this brand as an executive leader and start aligning and mirroring their actions and their views, you're going to start being perceived as that person. And that will eventually, because if you want to be an executive, start acting like an executive, eventually help earn you your seat at the table and get your opinion heard more and more valued.
Yeah, it's incredible all the little things that we can do, whether it is personal or professional, just little things that we can tweak. It's just that impatience kills us. But again, I mean, I subscribe to the whole just 1%, those incremental changes little by little. And is it easy? No. But I mean, it's almost like you have to get to that point where you understand, okay, to get to this goal, this is what it takes. I have to chip away at it. It's not going to be quick. Again, there's that impatience that we all have. I still have it, not going to lie. Um, and even as I may be going through whatever growth it is, development, and I'm chipping away at that goal, it's still impatience is everywhere. You get to those points where you maybe think you're heading in the wrong direction or not, but as long as I guess you're enjoying the journey and the learning and the evolution of yourself. I mean, as long as you gain that insight that there's value in that and why, it makes it a little easier to work in that right direction.
Hmm. Yeah, I was lucky enough that I was in a headspace when I was younger to believe that I should try the things that I read. Like, hey, Ben, you want to develop this? You want to be more confident? You want to be more liked? You want to be more persuasive? Whatever. You want to be more of a leader? Do this. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try it. And I would try it and I would write down what happened. And I would try it again and I'd write down what happened. And I'd do that over and over and over again until I figured out what worked. Some people can do that, hence the book. But also, some people need further coaching and help because there's roadblocks or limiting beliefs or fears that they need further assistance with. Hence, you're a coach, I'm a coach. But if you are willing and then at the point in your life where you want to try things on your own and you want to, coach yourself with the book, then hopefully, right, hopefully this is enough and hopefully create a change.
So you've talked about how you were driven by performance in soccer, nutrition. You wanted to see those subtle changes in diet, what they would do to your body, recovery, all that. Was it was that modeled for you? Obviously, that's big in the sports fields, but was there somebody that stood out that introduced that to you, like really looking at everything almost in that paradigm? Did somebody model that behavior of reading and then improving, or is it just something you kind of I mean, it can be common sense, absolutely, like, if I wanna learn about something,
Yeah.
I read about something and evolve myself, but did somebody happen to show that to you, mentor you, model it for you? Or you just had
Yeah.
that
I'm not
innate
sure.
curiosity yourself?
Yeah. I could just I could say that my father helped me because he was a Mr. Fix-It. Something happened, he went to the library, learned about it, and went to go do it. But I don't remember enough other than that to say where it came from. I am very much a skills-based learner. So something happens in my life that I don't know and I go and learn about it. And that is a trait that I hope more and more people start to internalize,
Mhm.
especially in a world where I can open up ChatGPT in a tab. I could
Yeah.
sit here while we talk and go, "Why did Benjamin Ritter write Becoming Fearless?" And I bet you would give me an answer that would be pretty good. But
Yeah.
we live in a world where we can learn anything. The disclaimer: I had a client who we were doing some reflective work, and they were using ChatGPT to ask them questions about themselves, and they weren't then getting the benefit of self-reflection and doing the work for themselves. And the answers were not personalized. They were not helpful in his own growth and development. So taking the time to go learn something yourself and to then reflect on how it impacts your life and then to go try it out is, I think, the most important way that I've transformed who I am and learned who I want to be. And where it came from? maybe my father, maybe other areas of my life that I don't remember, but I do ascribe that trait as being a huge proponent of my success.
Yeah, it's it's amazing how we that's something we have to learn ourselves, to understand ourselves, to assess ourselves. You know, we go through all these years of schooling. Now you're seeing it more and more. But I mean, when I was coming up through school, it wasn't about that. It was more about the information we have for you that we need you to take notes on, that we need you to write papers on, that we need you to test and quiz on. This is what's going to get you to that next level in life. But there was very little self reflection at all, self assessment at all. Like, okay, give us your opinion on this essay that we want you to read or something to that effect. But it's incredible how that's like the biggest work you see in coaching is like self-assessment. You know, it's not even communication
Yeah.
to others because communication to others that first has to start with you assessing yourself. What are you about before you convey that to others? Before you put that out there, you got to be cognizant of what you're showing others, but all that traces back to who are you? It's
Mhm.
amazing how we're all learning that as adults. As I said before, the younger generations, they're more reflective. My kids are in grammar school and they're getting reflective questions. They're studying their emotions. The emotions that they do study and are aware of, the list grows as they get older that they can talk about. But it is incredible that the thing you're closest to and you have to do the most learning about is yourself. It's mind blowing.
Yeah. And I am lucky in a way that I had experiences at a younger age where I realized that my mind was the worst or best thing that, in my life. That my obsession with soccer, despite it creating a lot of positive traits in my life, was not healthy. And I attached my validation to something that was external of myself. Like, who learns that when they're young? Like, I
Yeah.
had an experience that highlighted that that was something that was bad. That wasn't a good thing, that your value should come from yourself, not from things outside of yourself. You know, the idea that craving, being scared of what people think of you or feeling like you're an outcast because you're not sure what this like, that's not a healthy mindset. Like, and I went through these experiences learning that, oh, my mind can be my friend or my enemy, and how do I want to fix that? And so that
Mhm.
led me to that personal pursuit of like self education
Yeah.
and the fact that you can change things through just learning. And yeah, I wish it's awesome to hear that they're teaching certain things like that to kids now and in school because those types of character traits or the ways that you can see the world are going to impact your life more than studying calculus. Sorry if we have any math
I
listeners.
no. I'm of the mind I agree with that. Just because in general, I've talked to so many professionals and most of them were kinda like, "Yeah, what I learned in school, it just it" and you're seeing that more and more, like, what you learn in school isn't really preparing you for life. Um, but anyway, that's a longer, deeper, different conversation. Ben, for you, I'm curious, in writing this, what changed or evolved in you? Not necessarily the writing process, the editing, publishing, anything like that, but what changed the most about you maybe in reviewing your work, maybe in writing out your work? Did anything evolve, change? Were there any aha moments, anything that stands out where something shifted in you by putting the book out?
Whenever you teach something, it becomes, I think, more solidified. And so the concept of fearlessness that I never really thought about. I didn't think that how I was living my life was because I was fearless.
Yeah, yeah.
The terms that I had were living for yourself, so identifying your values, integrating into your life, becoming more intentional, becoming the leader of your own career. That's kind of how I thought that, or like everything I did related to. And then you build a book and you're like, whoa, every single concept that I believe in is about just being fearless and not being concerned and figuring out what you want to work towards and believing that you should work towards it. And now, like disclaimer, like when I was younger and became obsessed with soccer, that wasn't a good thing to be fearless towards because it tipped the scales in the wrong way. But fearlessness in regards to like your mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical health and then like obviously like your profession and what you're trying to work towards in that way. So I think that it just reiterated, I think, some of my beliefs in life and the values that I hold dear.
But for you, even going through your soccer training, your obsession, right, as you've called it, is it was it you just said because it didn't go the right way, but if things had been different, if you could follow that road and hell, maybe played professional soccer, how do you think you'd how would you view that now? In this mindset, in this life path that you're on
Yeah.
now, how would you view it if things had worked out and it got you to that level where I'm assuming you aspire to, whether it's posters, magazines, or whatever you're watching on TV, international soccer players, whatever it may be. Do you I
So
mean,
because
it tends to be that that's what gets you there is that obsession, right?
because I had the experience where that obsession like negatively impacted me mentally, like I ended up having some serious issues. It negatively impacted my body, and it led me to like feel like a social outcast from people around me and not develop positive social skills. Like the fact that that happened, created something more important in my life, which is self-development, confidence, fearlessness. Now, if I that didn't happen, let's say that bizarro world, Ben stays in soccer and becomes successful and goes down this path. I mean, I can only imagine
Hmm,
that event, like any sort of mountaintop, you
yeah,
create another mountaintop. And so
yeah.
I don't know what that next pursuit would have been, but it probably wouldn't have been soccer at some point. I mean, but I'm not sure if I answered your question. It's just so difficult because the
Oh, yeah,
loss is
of
what
course.
created the path to where I am.
Yeah, and that's another theme that's come up in this series is no matter most of them, no matter what the hardships were in the past, there are things we wouldn't have wished upon ourselves or we would wish upon anybody else, what happened in certain paths of people on this series, but they made it out the other end and they are who they are because of those things. So that it's interesting how that plays out. Again, you wouldn't prefer it at that moment when it happened, but if you can learn from it and grow with it, it gets you to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah,
Um,
but to answer that for a second, like immediately after the loss, my mind is saying I would not have been happy. I'm a deeper person than just an athlete. Like I would need more in my life. What would that be? We tend to like the way that we interpret events leads to our success or failure. So the fact that immediately after that event, I was like, okay, what do I need to do now? That's gone. Like
yeah.
suffer, feel bad. That's okay. But what's next? And it's like that response, is what creates gold, right? Or what is it? Lemonade from lemons or whatever. And if we realize that we are not a victim, we are just a product of our efforts, and we can curate our lives towards in a certain direction. Um, we can eventually create a life that we really are interested in living.
Ben, so obviously this is a recent publication, your book, but just based on your having written a book in the past, writing this one, I can imagine things kind of play out in your mind, different directions you want to head in. Is there any idea you have for where you would want to go next for your writing? General idea, even general overview or general direction of what you would want to do next.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna take a little bit of a break from from writing books. Maybe, yeah, we'll do some social posts though, but really, I'm not sure. I waited to write this book for a while, for a couple of years, maybe maybe a little bit more than that, because I didn't feel like I had enough to say yet, and I feel like I wrote something that can last a long time. And so for me to want to write something else, I'm gonna have to have some sort of unique experience again. Like I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to go through. I'm gonna have to go through some stuff,
yeah,
and
yeah.
hopefully that doesn't happen soon.
I agree. I agree. Um, Ben, just in beginning to wrap up, is there anything else that you want to share? What else are you up to these days? Anything that I might not have asked about that you want to share? Anything at all? The floor is yours.
Yeah, fearlessness doesn't always mean action, it can mean reflection. And often the greatest growth comes from people that are willing to face themselves in ways that they haven't before. Sitting in a day without a phone, like, ooh, funny if we went back 20 years and told someone that. Pen and paper and asking yourself questions and answering them, thinking back on your most painful memories and trying to figure out what you can learn from it. Just like the scariest things that you can ask yourself generally are what are going to lead to some of the greatest opportunities for growth. And we just need to slow down a little bit more to make that happen. So
Yeah.
I haven't said that yet and hope that's coming through.
Yeah. In just a few, maybe within the last 2 weeks, a recent episode, I had mentioned that it was kind of like in the self reflection area, where the scariest thing that you can face is yourself. Just going through this series, talking about our pasts. There was a lot of mention of childhood trauma, childhood disruptions. So the more that I've spoken about that, the more it gets me thinking about my own and in talking to other people. It's amazing what you find in your past when you kind of pull back the curtains and look there to who you really are. Because we spend so much
Hmm.
time working forward, pushing forward, overstimulated by technology that rarely do we reflect on who we are. That I think out of everything that I've encountered in my life, everything that was uncertain, that was unpredictable, that I was scared of, that I was fearful of, the scariest thing really is looking back and figuring out yourself, your weaknesses, your insecurities, your vulnerabilities, all that stuff. It's incredible how scary it can be. Nothing from the external. It's amazing how everything on the inside can be the most powerful thing or the most debilitating thing that you have
Hmm.
at your disposal.
Well, the most important leader in your life is you. And are you being the leader that you want for yourself? And
Yeah.
generally, that requires you to go back and to ask yourself who you are and who you want to be. And maybe take that 60 minutes from a tight TV show you were going to watch because you're tired and close your eyes and ask yourself some questions.
Yeah. And again, the book we covered was Ben's own, Becoming Fearless 65 Strategies to Journey from Self Doubt to Self Mastery. Ben, thank you so much for taking time to sit down with me.
Thanks for having me on, John. Love the questions. I did some reflection myself during this chat.
Right, right. That's the best compliment that I could get is just, taking conversation somewhere where somebody hasn't gone before or thought in a certain way. So I appreciate that. And to everyone listening and watching, if there's anything that I might have missed, things you think I should have asked that I didn't, please reach out. Let me know. I'll reach out to Ben, see what kind of insights, guidance, knowledge, anything additional that I can get back from Ben. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.